Well, welcome everybody to the Wednesday, March 13th, 2024 Aladdin DAO Community Call. We've made a lot of promises here right before Craig came on, so we're going to try to live up to
them. They were bullshit.
We're going to attempt to make a good effort. Be efficient with your time, because you folks got a lot of tweeting and promoting and getting the word out about
and celebrating Dencun.
That's right, yeah,
and celebrating other things. It's there's always something to celebrate. I say always, there isn't, but this time there is.
It's another wonderful day in crypto.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, speaking of which, let's jump right into it with FX. So,
yeah. Okay, so we got some stuff to talk about, and the big one, K-Met's the big one is the gauge voting kicks off tonight. So we talked about this. The initial allocation for emissions into rebalance pools and LP farming, all of that was just kind of like arbitrarily set by the team in a sort of a structure that makes sense to bridge us from the launch of the protocol or the launch of the FXUSD asset all the way through until this very night, when the real voting will kick off. And we're going to see very quickly, I think, although we've got a whole week, but we'll see, I think, quite quickly how the liquidity is going to evolve, how the emissions are going to evolve, how the incentives are going to change. I'm excited.
I mean, this is kind of like what we're all, jazzed about and excited for. I mean, this is how we launch FX into the stratosphere, right?
Yeah, well, it's a real rubber hits the road situation. I mean, obviously, on one hand, I know that all you FXN people are pretty damn excited about the possibility that there may be some people ready to pay you for your votes. But I'm also kind of just excited to see how does the protocol work once we don't have this even carefully allocated emissions across the whole spectrum of rebalance pools and LP farming. It's really going to be interesting to watch, because, as you say, that's the heart of the mechanism here is the fight for liquidity within the FFX protocol. And I've seen a lot on the timeline about the fees, which are insane. And I mean, I'm thinking up and to the right for those, but we'll wait and see. But in terms of the value that protocols can get for incentivizing, for having liquidity on FFX, that what we've talked about many times before, that super efficient way to incentivize on-chain liquidity that FFX offers, I think that's going to start to become obvious really quickly once we see how these emissions evolve based on votes. And I think that as the word spreads, it's just gonna. My prediction is that if people can really grok, if protocols can really grok what we're doing here and what it means for their liquidity costs, boy, it should be a good thing to see. Should be a big impact.
It's interesting. I had an opportunity to kind of pop in on Leviathan News last week with the CVX5, and we were talking about liquidity incentives. And CryptoVestor, if you're available to kind of pop in and maybe talk about it as well. Just sort of like the efficiency of voting incentives. And we were talking about, obviously the big one everybody talks about is sort of the curve ones, right? Which is, you spend a dollar and then you get like $1.30 in curve emissions. Well, with Prisma, it's like you spend a dollar, you get like $4.50 in liquidity incentives. With FXN, I haven't done any calculations, but I don't know. I think we're probably like an order of magnitude above that, already, with just sort of the gauges and the value.
Yeah, we're probably closer to a 10x, I would think, maybe 8 to 10x. So a dollar spent probably would deliver, I don't know, anywhere between $7 to $10, maybe more.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible value for these protocols. I mean, and so, obviously, there will be like some fluctuations over time, in terms of like those sort of like, I guess you can arbitrage them against themselves or whatever. But I mean, like, it's just going to be wild to see, like, once people sort of like realize like, oh my gosh, like the return you can get. and the ability to pump liquidity through FXN is just going to be incredible. So it's going to be wild to see sort of like how protocols sort of how word spreads, how it goes out in the world. And that, I mean, that's, as a community, that's our job as well, right? To get that out there. But pretty cool. And we've got 3 markets right now that are kind of set up, and I guess we can kind of go through them real quick, just to remind folks. But
Yeah, sure. So there's in time for voting epoch number 0. I'm calling this one 0 because I like to LARP like I'm a coder.
Such a computer guy.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I actually am, but anyway, never mind. We have 3 different vote markets that are online, and they are ready to accept incentive payments from protocols who may have a vested interest in seeing FXN emissions be voted for in certain pools. And so, guys, you can check out Vodium, you can check out the StakeDAO vote market, and you can check out Paladin. You've got all these 3 different options. Now, of course, it depends on what you're voting with. So Vodium, they are offering incentives for VLCVX votes. On StakeDAO vote market, you can get incentives on voting SDFXN and VEFXN. And then on Paladin, if I'm reading this right, you can get incentives for voting VEFXN, SDFXN, as well as VLCVX. So all 3 of the different governance power holding tokens are going to be offered markets on Paladin. And I am only kind of aware of how Paladin works, but K-Mets, I think you maybe have some more information on that, because I need to learn. I need to know.
Yeah, I think Paladin's pretty interesting, and it's new for folks that have been sort of like in the convex. So Arrow, just to answer your questions, you kind of choose one or the other, Vodium or Paladin. But let's talk about kind of the differences maybe between them. So Vodium, we're all.
I'm just going to go ahead and mute whatever liquid is going into whatever other liquid.
Okay. So anyway, so let's talk about the differences between these maybe a little bit. So Vodium obviously is for VLCVX, as you discussed. We're all pretty familiar with that, I think, as Aladdin's been pretty ingrained in sort of the convex ecosystem. StakeDAO as well, their vote market, Aladdin's, we've been using that one for a while, especially with ASDCRV and how that's been integrated, especially, and also with SDFXN. So Paladin is really unique because, and I discussed a little bit last week on one of the A-Team's podcast or our Twitter space, but one of the things that's sort of unique about bribe markets, especially like sort of Vodium, is as a protocol, or an incentivizer, you can put up, an incentive or a bribe, and you're kind of guessing as to like how much incentives you'll get, how much VECRV you are actually incentivizing. Like, you never really and truly know until after the round, and usually every time, it works to your favor. You're just kind of like sort of guessing a little bit. And that goes the same sort of with vote market as well. Paladin's kind of unique in that they have created these things called quests. And the quests essentially are a way for a protocol to put up a bounty of like a certain dollar amount, and that they try to attract a certain amount of VE tokens to vote for them. So it's sort of like trying to match a dollar amount with the VE. And so if you have VEFXN, you can go and you can find the quests that you like, and you can vote for them. So the incentivizer knows how much VEFXN or VECRV or whatever they're doing. They know exactly how much they're getting there, and the person that's accepting those incentives, the VE holders, also know exactly how much they're getting in return for it. So it's a really interesting kind of new concept, relatively new. I mean, to me at least. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see sort of how it interacts, especially with sort of like the RVE holders as well. Just
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be those two markets, so Staked Out and Paladin. So it's going to be interesting to see how the protocols, the incentivizers, sort of look at those markets and sort of evaluate their needs and how they want to approach it. So it should be
So
pretty cool.
on Paladin, can you collectively incentivize multiple tokens? Like as an incentivizer, could you say like, oh, well, we're this is the quest for like, and any of the FXN holding, FXN gauge or vote power holding tokens can participate, or is it only token by token quests?
If I don't know if anyone else has utilized Paladin, but let's see here. You
It's
said a
token
different
by
question.
token, says Cyril. Okay,
Yeah,
interesting,
there we go.
interesting. Okay, yeah.
So that'll be a cool one to watch and keep an eye on. So yeah, Cyril, if you want to pop on and talk about it briefly, you're more than welcome to, or Robo Odin, either one of you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it's token by token, but as a voter, you can vote for different strategies. Let's say 55% on this strategy, it's 50% on this strategy, and so on. And then you get the rewards of the different strategies. So you can do it manually, or you can also delegate your voting power to the auto voting stuff they have.
Yeah.
And they will compound all the rewards into a stable coin.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. Yeah, no, that's really cool.
And I believe for our product, it would probably be FXUSD and not USDC as they did with other products.
Oh, that is even better.
Hey, I think so. Yeah.
Definitely better. Definitely better.
Finally,
Yeah,
a chance to farm stablecoins without taking more Silicon Valley bank risk.
Yeah, exactly. And as I heard, Aave really likes this platform to bribe. So there might be quite a fair amount of bribes on straight from the beginning on Paladin.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I'm we've obviously been I say we, I mean you're included in the we here, Cyril. Like the team and the close community have been really working like crazy, talking to a ton of different protocols and really kind of getting out there and educating like basically protocols and teams and people about how this vote market works, so that we have enough attention at the beginning so that we can kind of get rolling. And we've heard a lot of interest. Now, I mean, the rubber hits the road, like I said, kicking off tonight and watching over the next week. And so we'll see what happens. And I'm hesitant to say like this is what we expect, because it's nothing's real until it's real. But the interest we've been hearing in the back end has been pretty solid. And if even half of what we've heard about follows through, it should be a fun week.
Yeah, I'm excited to pay attention closely and see who all's incentivizing and how that will affect other incentivizers. And I mean, it's going to be a cool one. So there you go.
All right, so that's
opportunities.
voting. That's voting and incentives, not bribes, but it's ways to earn with your governance power, folks. That's a thing we recommend. Let's jump into the next thing. FIP03. We want to just kind of close the loop on that. The FIP03 proposal, that is the fixed carve out for our FETH, our first love, our firstborn child. Emissions to the FETH pool, while we are focusing FXUSD and beyond KMETs and beyond, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
Beyond.
But if FIP03 is it's up. I think it's quite uncontroversial. Everything that we have discussed with stakeholders and in the community, and we've had not a ton of engagement on the forum, which is generally a good thing for something like that. We're looking at closing that voting off soon and then getting that in place. When does that end, actually? I don't have that number in front of me. Should be soon. Should be very soon.
It's this week. I don't have the exact day up in front of me, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
Maybe Paul can drop the link in chat.
or just kind of give us an update real quick. But yeah, I mean, it's I think we're all here because or most of us are here because FETH is basically the reason for the FX system, right? I mean, and how it sort of came to be, and
It was the
it's
first.
really sort of the proof of concept, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and it was we were aiming high, and we still are. That's going to be. I think especially in a bull. That's the other kind of interesting thing, and the other reason why I want to make sure that FETH doesn't lose any steam unnecessarily is that in a bull market, holding a stable coin that grows with crypto as opposed to one that is 100% anchored in fiat, I think that just becomes more and more attractive. And honestly, I think that that's that is a kind of a big story that we should be talking about too, potentially, right? Again, I don't want to take wind out of the sails of the huge FXUSD and beyond launch that we're looking at here. But man, to me, FETH is just getting more and more attractive. And as Ghost says, like dropping XETH at ETH. At like when ETH was like so, and you remember like for the first few weeks, right? Like we launched XETH, and then like ETH price was down, and then a bunch of people bought XETH, and then the ETH price recovered to the starting, like the original, the ETH price recovered, but because there were so many more people in XETH, the NAV of XETH was still lower, and it was like, people were kind of hand wringing, but then all of that goes away.
Yeah.
Once ETH starts actually moving and not just sideways chopping like we were doing at launch.
A bull market solves a lot of problems, doesn't it?
Solves a lot of problems.
But it's interesting. I was actually reflecting the other day. Like it's been a year since the USDC DPEG, which basically inspired the creation of FX Protocol. And we've actually.
Can we take a second to just appreciate that we're already talking about the asset that we built in response to this catastrophe being like our original OG asset, and it's only been a year since the thing which caused us to build it happened? It's kind of nuts.
It is nuts. And here's what's interesting, and maybe even adds a little bit more value add to FETH. If just from a macro perspective, this week, the Federal Reserve ended their BTFP program, which is their bank term funding program, which essentially allowed all of these banks, like essentially what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, caused this liquidity crisis right throughout the banking system, and all these banks were underwater because the Fed jacked up the rates. And now they have all these long-term bonds that have like lost like 20-25% of their value, and so these banks were underfunded, and so they're underwater. So the Fed had to step in, bring in this BTFP, and it has basically been a lifeboat for a huge majority of these local smaller banks in the United States. We could have had many more Silicon Valley Bank issues throughout the United States if that program had not come through. The BTFP was ended on, I think it was Monday, and so now we all kind of look and see, and we'll be waiting to see. Okay, so who's the next bag holder that's going to be sort of the issue? And right now it's New York City Bank, NYCB, which is everybody kind of like has their eyeballs on that had a lot of Signature Bank's assets. They purchased a lot of their assets, and so yeah, there you go, Ghost. Yeah, but they're in trouble. And so Signature, if you recall, was one of the banks that I believe USDC was using, or had some deposits there, in the Silicon Valley Bank. So this is why FETH is still, it's not like it was sort of a one-time only relevant sort of a thing. Like FETH is always going to have sort of a place so long as these liquidity issues, as long as these banks are basically, as long as sort of fractional reserve banking in the United States or wherever the largest liquidity is is still active, and this is on the on the agenda. So FETH, having that carve out for these emissions, having FETH still be an available asset to be the most decentralized sort of stable asset in crypto is still hugely important. And so, it just amazes me. Like, it just keeps going, and we're going to need FETH for a long, long time, it sounds like. So we'll see. Yeah, a bunch of them are exposed to commercial real estate too. So there's your market update.
I mean, normally, let's just take a second and say, like, is that the first KMETS market update that we have heard?
I think, yeah. Well, we'll see how well. Yeah. Oh, Charlene gave me a fire.
Yeah, that's high praise.
That is high praise. I'll take it. But yeah, I just FETH, I still have it. I mean, and that's the great thing is, like, it keeps going up as you just hold it, right? As long as we're in a bull market. And so it's kind of a nice little stable asset to just have. So
yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I mean, you get people like KMETS who immigrate to the Aladdin community, and then they start taking the jobs of the people who live here. It's all over again.
Build the wall. Build a
wall. We need a wall.
Make Aladdin great again. That's right. Yes.
Yeah, make the real mega. That's the real mega. Oh God, let's move on before we get ourselves into trouble.
Move on quick. Okay, back to Kate Middleton in this issue. I have a lot of theories.
Back to Kate Middleton and criticizing the British Crown.
Yes.
Chapter 2.
All right. What else we got here, Craig?
Oh, right. Craig's still online. And I know that the king reviews all of this content. So we better.
Yeah, that's right.
Apologies, Your Highness. Now,
the straight and narrow. Here we go.
Moving on. XETH. Next thing, a tweak, an adjustment. This is a parameter adjustment that we put through last week. We have tweaked the XETH minting fees from 1 to 1.5%. So that is an increase in the XETH minting fees. Sort of within all of these fees are constrained in the contract, and again within some kind of a range, which I don't know off the top of my head. But these parameter adjustments we do periodically, and for this kind of thing, basically what we're looking at is we're responding to just really, really strong demand for XETH right now. And so when the demand is really high, we can temper it by fee tweaks, or feeks, as I have just coined. So we use these feeks to just kind of keep everything running as smoothly as possible, and obviously maximize the there, you spelt it wrong, DeFi. And just kind of obviously maximize the value for our FXN holders, but ultimately it's really more of a tweaking to make sure that the system is running at its best.
Yeah, and this is sort of I'm not going to use the term temporary, but basically you can think of us as a manual sort of moderation of the fee until we can basically bring in sort of dynamic fee changes. I mean, ultimately, I don't think. Go ahead.
I was going to say we haven't talked about that too much in these calls, but we're like, for a long time now, I mean, basically in parallel with the initial development of the protocol, we've been thinking of ways to implement some kind of dynamic fee system. So essentially, so that the minting fees can vary based on the sort of, I say health of the protocol, but it's more really the state of the collateral ratio, and use that as just an extra, again, just this in the same way that I just described, making this parameter change. It makes sense to kind of add a little bit of incentive to minting X when the collateral ratio is lower, and and that just is additive with the higher leverage that you get at that type anyway. And then to scale up those fees as that leverage falls off, right? As the collateral ratio gets really high, you end up with a lot of XETH minted, and then in order to help kind of maintain a decent amount of leverage for the holders, you compensate with the minting fees, right? And so this is obviously like a second order effect, right? This isn't kind of like the big one is obviously the leverage is changing naturally as the system collateral ratio changes, but all of the different like these parameters, right, and the fees are kind of the main one, are really a way to take a system that is running well and just help it run better, right? And then obviously all of the knobs that we're turning, it's just FXN is a good thing. If you can get any claim on FXN protocol revenues, KMETs, I don't know if there's a way to do that, but if you can, you might want to.
I tell you what, as a VEFXN holder, I kind of like it when the fees go up. So
right. Right. Well, it's not for you, KMETs. It's for the good of all of us. You just happen to benefit.
So. I guess. Well, I'm just happy to be here. I'm just happy to be a part of it, and we're early. We're still early. So there you go. Yeah. So that's the fee tweak that was done there, and yeah, and as we say, eventually dynamic down the road. I mean, that's the thing. Ultimately, you want this to be an autonomous protocol. It's a machine. It runs on its own. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's again like zooming out and trying to keep the big picture in mind. We want to make sure that we can scale TVL, and especially the stable TVL. Like our goal is to take a legitimate swing. Like we're taking a David Pebble in the sling swing at the big guys, at USDC and USDT, and we're doing it from a position of complete decentralization. So, wish us luck.
There you go. There's your Bible story for the week from
Not and let me tell you, anybody who knows me in person knows that I am not the first person that you would expect that from. But when we're here, it's just. We're in the Twilight Zone, baby.
There you go. More homiletics from Kruger coming up soon. Okay, so
I'd have made a hell of a pastor.
Boy, literally, yeah. Okay, all right. Back to business. Back to the straight and narrow here. I think
we're mostly within our original claimed timeline.
We are
we're close.
Definitely flirting with danger here. But
all right, so listen, it's time to talk about something kind of exciting, and I don't know, should we? There's now our friend CryptoVestor's online, and he has been pumping content into the timeline.
Has he?
First rate stuff. Oh, as
just
if
a little bit.
Know. As if you don't know.
Just a little bit.
He's just so shy and bashful. All right, I'll take your word for
it. Okay, so we are looking at spinning up a restake backed USD stable to go along with FXUSD. I think that the tentative working name right now, correct me if I'm wrong, KMETs, is RUSD.
RUSD, you are correct.
Okay, I was actually thinking this morning RX would be another option too, and we could call it your prescription for staking yields, right? RX, because that's short for
RX. That's kind of cool. Prescription USD.
Prescription USD. Oh, anyhow, no, we're whatever ticker we end up using. Looks like I say RUSD is in the lead right now. So the idea here is we have got a massive powerhouse in this underlying mechanism, and one of the things that has been sort of an omnipresent issue in the back end is we're wanting, like, FXUSD is specifically designed with like super high resiliency and like a lot of thinking about limiting risk on the back end. This is kind of like our like headline stablecoin. And so, and again, for a stablecoin like that, it's so important that we have the that we have the risks well quantified and under control and minimized for something that's meant to grow to massive liquidity. But restaked ETH is just such an obvious and incredible, first of all, narrative, but obviously also, like revenue stream to have on the back end. Like, again, if you understand how FFX works, you're taking assets that have some kind of intrinsic yield, and you're using those in a reserve in order to be able to farm those yields while holding stables, and also on the flip side for the X token, be able to take leverage on the underlying asset. Well, restaked ETH is tracking ETH just the same way that plain old staked ETH is. And so we know there's huge demand on the leverage token on the X side. That's never a problem right now, at least. And so the missing piece really when we were having all these conversations is it doesn't really make sense to have restaked ETH as part of the FXUSD backing, but it absolutely makes sense to offer a way to farm restaking yields, and by the way, points, because people love points. Forget about money. People want points. And
points.
and to be able to
Stable
use
points.
yeah, exactly, and to be able to farm those points with a stable. What do you think, Crypto? Have I got that more or less right?
I think you hit it on the head. Yep, got it right on point. I think that's the thing. The big killer app is the ability to earn the LRT yields and then also earn these points while remaining completely stable.
Yeah, and that's like, okay, so I'm gonna step on my soapbox for a minute here, as I say, as if I ever got off. This is if you are not interested in farming points and restaking yields with a stablecoin, that's cool, and that is absolutely, I can even understand that perspective. But what this is just a huge signal, I think, on about, first of all, how powerful this mechanism is, right? Like, over the course of a few weeks, we've been able to, like, and most of the work, a lot of the work has just been in arguing over the right way to implement it.
Pretty much.
This mechanism of FFX allows us to create these opportunities that just, like, this is a significant product, like stable farming of restaking yields and points. Like, that's a whole protocol in its own, baby. And now, we can create that within this structure of FFX. It can pop on, really over the course of a couple of weeks, and it's really just all down to the power of that underlying mechanism, right? And so, while we're talking, I see Mughal asked earlier, like, what's the thinking behind another stablecoin? You say, how do we solve the issue of liquidity, fragmentation with 3 stable assets? Listen, you are. These are things that we have been talking about a ton in the background, and I think that there's still a certain level of disagreement within the community and just in general, and the folks that we've talked to. My perspective, and we're getting into something that is just kind of uniquely my perspective here, is that especially in the beginning, we're not going to be so focused on RUSD as an asset so much as, to me, it makes more sense to think of it just as basically like a farming vault. So one of the things that has kind of come up, and it was a misunderstanding on my part, is that it looks like there are technical reasons why all of the farming pairs that we've talked about over many weeks, the stable assets in those farming pairs are actually going to have to be liquid. They're going to need to be tokenized in order to work, be able to farm through convex and things like that. It really doesn't make sense to restrict them to being illiquid only and forced to be in the rebalance pool. So what that means is that, strictly speaking, any stable token that FFX creates is a stable coin, right? But the key, I think, is that whether we're like trying to create and promote an asset and create liquidity outside or not, that determines how much attention we put onto those to try to turn them into capital A assets, if you will, out in the world. That's really going to be on us to determine how much effort we put into that. And I think that it'll be partly driven by demand in the market, right? Like, is there a huge amount of demand for the restake back stable outside of farming it? I mean, for me personally, I wouldn't think so. It makes huge sense to me to use the rebalance, like this restake stable rebalance pool, and farm points and farm super high yields, and have like another leverage ETH, just because, especially because the demand for X is so high. It's not a problem, and it's always going to be a good thing. It's going to allow more people to take more leverage as they want. But the thing here is, if there's not demand for that stable or something that you can do with it outside of f of x, it's not really taking any liquidity away from FXUSD, the token, right? And our view is kind of, and I think this is a reasonable view, is that the risk profile is so different on exposure to a restaked ETH versus exposure to a staked ETH that it's not that one is taking anything away from the other. So the underlying of our USD to begin with is EtherFi. So EtherFi is backing backing it ETH as it's called. I think it's the technical term.
Yeah, I mean, man, you nailed it again, Kruger. Just an excellent description of what we're trying to develop here and put out. I mean, it's such a no-brainer, right? I mean, just it's the restaking is just, it's kind of got everybody sort of captivated, and of course, EtherFi is just blowing the doors off of the restaking, sort of platform. And
they're winning like Charlie Sheen. If I just to give a little throwback reference there.
Hashtag winning, is that what you're going for there? Oh my goodness, starting to date ourselves.
That's what we do. We're hip. We're with it.
Yes,
we know
we
the
were.
latest.
Yes, until they changed what it was.
Charlie Sheen from 2.5 Men. He might have been in other things before, but anyway, guys.
Wall Street. He was in Wall Street. My God, Major League. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, K-Mets. I'm joking. I'm making fun of everyone. Anyway, guys. By the way, as always, we want to hear your opinions on the matter, and take some time to process. But there is a legitimate concern, and there's a lot that we talked about behind the scenes. Like, are we going to liquidity fragmentation was top of mind, really, like a big part of the sometimes combative arguments and discussions behind the scenes about, do we want to, how do we want to structure the f of x product offering to make sure that we're not sort of competing with ourselves, and in so doing fragment liquidity, and how does that feed into the broader mission of creating a stablecoin with enough liquidity depth to be able to take, what was it, like 9 minutes ago that I was doing the David versus Goliath referencing. So obviously this is something that it's been thought about, right? Like it's a factor in these discussions, and there's a certain amount, it's not a zero risk thing, but as I say, I suspect that the restake USD, the restaked stablecoin, is going to really be more of a farm vault. Think of it more of a farm vault. If it's in terms of how we're out in the world screaming about it, right? We're going to be mostly, I would think, and again, I have no control over anything, so take all this with a lot of salt. I would think that in terms of what we're pushing here, it's an incredible opportunity to farm points and huge restaking yields with stables, as opposed to a different stablecoin that you want to have in your wallet to just look at like a pet rock, which you can do.
Yeah,
I think the idea, guys, just if I could just chime in for
Please.
a second. I think the idea, the concept is that, yes, for the very beginning stages, the next couple of weeks, it's primarily going to be used for farming, and obviously points going to be the hugest narrative there. But we don't know what that future is going to look like. We don't know if LRTs are really going to be the next, iteration of LSDs, or if LSDs themselves become all integrated with EigenLayer as well, and everything is an LRT. We don't know that yet. And so to keep our options open for having both of these different stables is a smart idea, even if one doesn't really necessarily work out and the other one does. I expect one will prevail. Maybe they both will. I don't know, but certainly
Yeah.
the farming makes sense in the beginning. But it's basically making FX future proof with
and I
a
think
potential stable.
so much of this discussion is based around the huge discrepancy in risk profile, or the potentially huge discrepancy in risk profile between restaked ETH and staked ETH. And I mean, people have had the same discussion about staked ETH versus ETH, right? But as a sort of DeFi in general has, I think, more or less, plus or minus, converged on staked ETH being sort of not considered ETH, but certainly considered like in many places it's like an acceptable level of risk to add for the reward that you get. I think that restaked ETH, right when we're still in the points phase, it's really tough to know what the future looks like. As you say, Vester,
Right.
like it's
Of course.
it's hard to know where it evolves to. Right now, the risk looks significantly different from staked ETH, and I think
Sure.
I think it's not wrong to say it is significantly different from staked ETH.
No,
And so,
I don't think it's wrong to say that. I think that's
so,
why
like,
it makes sense to have two separate, to not, combine those two different risk profiles for sure.
Yeah, well, and that's why it doesn't make sense to combine it into that coin. But I also think that there's a potential down the road where if the risk profiles between the two kind of normalize, then you basically, maybe there's some kind of like a merge essentially that happens or whatever, where
Sure.
or as you say,
Of
if staked ETH ends up being completely overtaken by restaked, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Then we
Yeah,
have Starlin create a factory where we all go and deposit either our FXUSD or
Mhm.
our USD, and we get back, whatever one of those two tokens,
Absolutely.
whichever the prevailing one is.
And you know what we're looking at here, and again, I think that number one story here is that, like, let's get in and for anybody who wants to, I feel like there's probably a pretty good amount of demand, but I don't know, we'll see, for people to farm restaking yields with stables. I mean, that's the big story here. And if rather than trying to, like, I think in the beginning our general sort of approach is, like I say, treat this as an awesome opportunity to farm points and like another way to get a hold of leverage ETH. And I say another way, like, basically it's more leverage ETH, right? It doesn't dilute the leverage of existing XETH because it's different demand on the stable side. And so basically it's just a good news story. You can think of it like a farming vault if you, rather than thinking it like an asset that's competing with FXUSD, because, like I say, at this point in time, it's really not.
Yeah, and another thing too, Kruger, to point out is, and I think it's really important for people to know, is that this is a showcase of what FX can do.
Yeah.
As far as being able to bring a product like a stablecoin to market within weeks of just launching, a stablecoin just weeks ago. So it just shows that that's what we do. I mean, that's what FX is. It creates stable assets and volatile assets. And so whenever there's another yield-bearing token out there that we think is has the right risk profile, has the right yields, we can, at a moment's notice, launch a pair and attract that TVL. So it's really
and I mean,
important for showcasing that.
Speaking of factories, it's going to be permissionless sooner or later. So
can't wait for that. Yeah,
it's not a question of. So I mean, really, what we're doing, as Tao points out, right? Like, we're the factory. We're keeping the important pools isolated. But ultimately, this is meant to be a permissionless DeFi protocol. So ultimately, we're going to be looking at anybody who wants to coming along and spinning up a pair.
Exactly.
And then, what I foresee in the future is, pairs kind of. Once you've got really, really big TVL in the sort of protected pools, what you're going to have, I think, are people coming along with isolated pairs in f of x and looking to try to do something to be able to get to be sort of admitted into the backing of the stablecoin. I mean, this is, again, this long in the future kind of nonsense that I'm talking about here, but imagine if you were a protocol and you came along and you spun up your pair, or even a person, whatever. Like, let's say you spun up a stable leverage pair and you were able to build really, really deep, really solid liquidity, and then your pair is, the asset backing it becomes considered, of a similar risk profile, or a reasonable enough risk profile that maybe it could be included in one of the big asset backings at a small limit. That's a great carrot to offer for protocols to come along and create these stable leverage pairs and try to build their liquidity, right? To try to kind of knock on the door and see if they can get in to these the isolated pools that we're sort of protecting up front.
All right.
One other quick thing I'll comment on this sort of on this on this sort of restaking restaked USD as a token as compared to as just like a farming pool. And this is like important. I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to mention it again. Right now, the technical limitation is that stable leverage pairs, the stable side is tokenized. It's got to be tokenized in order to be able to work properly in the ecosystem. And so by creating our USD as a sort of, it's by creating an asset as opposed to just having it be RE-ETH, what we're doing is we're actually strangely reducing the total number of potential stable assets coming out of the protocol, because if we have one bucket for all restaked ETH tokens, then for those tokens, they can only exist either in the backing of the RUSD or in the rebalance pool, as compared to all of the sort of factory or farming pools, whose tokens have to be tokenized and out in the world. So by creating a bucket to encompass restaking ETH in general, and obviously to begin with it's just ETH, but eventually it's potentially more. We're sort of reducing the total number of stable coins that FFX puts into the world.
Well, there you go. So we will be putting out sort of more information as launch date gets closer.
Look for it real damn soon, I think is what you mean.
There you go. I was getting there, but yes, real damn soon is the timeline. So just be watching your Discord timeline, and then the announcements, and so we'll post it then. Yeah. So when, as he said, as our pastor said, real damn soon. So okay,
Pastor C.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm a youth pastor. Pastor C.
Oh Lord. Okay, now for our first hymn. Let's go.
Oh boy, yeah.
So we'll just kind of rapid fire off. Go ahead.
Gonna go into the hip hop hymnal.
Yes, right. Yeah. Okay. So rapid fire, just a few other things, kind of around the ecosystem. Man, Clever did something really cool this past week. It passed the 3 million VLCVX mark. There you go. Yes, he nailed it. So that's huge. I mean, Clever's been active for what now? A little over a year, 2 years, maybe something like that.
I mean, it feels like a decade. So, but it's not. It's a crypto decade, which is a week and a half, I believe.
It's funny. I was actually on having a conversation yesterday with someone about Clever, and I mentioned sort of like the potential APR that you can get with the through just the bribes alone, and it blew their brains apart. Like they were doing some calculations to kind of like I can't get into it, but they were doing some important calculations regarding Clever. And once I told them sort of the APR, they had to like change everything because they did not realize like how incredible and powerful Clever is in terms of that feature. And so so Clever, it's just continually. I mean, gosh, talk about a number go up protocol. I mean, the TVL for CVX in it is just
and it's
cool.
as we've talked about in the past, as we've made adjustments to Clever. I mean, it really is so heavily coupled to the vote market on Convex but that vote market is also coupled to the market, and as things turn around, and especially as attention bleeds from the sort of Bitcoin and big assets into alts and DeFi, as we /hope/expect/wish whatever. I mean, I think that Clever is positioned to move several pegs up in general interest pretty soon.
I think you're probably right, but pretty cool to see it hit 3 million CVX. So there you go. Concentrator. Well, I mean, I saw Concentrator put out a tweet this morning that was asking folks if there was any new compounders they might be interested in, and I saw this list of gauges here on FX, and so seemed rather interesting. That kind of
seems like a hand in glove kind of fit, right? So let's keep an eye out. For Concentrator. I mean, it's going to surprise nobody when Concentrator spins up FFX pools, but Concentrator remains the premier and foremost way to farm your favorite assets by holding the assets you have.
It's such a cool thing. Yeah, and we've got some other things cooking, in the background for Concentrator
for another
as
time
well.
though. For another
time, yes.
We're not leaking today any more than we have already.
Yeah, we've given all the good stuff out.
We've leaked enough.
Although we've got one more thing.
Last but not least.
Definitely not least.
Go.
Yeah, the march to 150 million. We are really close now. Like to 150 million ALD. We've got 149,781,986. So
as of whenever you wrote that,
this morning.
And you know what? This morning. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, that is cool. And we've talked about this before. We've been the FFX is so exciting, and there's so much going on there. It's taking such a lot of attention. But ALD, man, I don't know. It's the structure for the protocol, the structure for the token. We know what it's going to look like. We've talked about it as a community. We've got the plans in place, and I mean, it's. I don't want to say dark horse, but it's definitely when attention comes to it. I think that people might suddenly realize that holy cow, like this is the one asset. This is the one ring asset of the Aladdin ecosystem, right? This is how you get your piece of everything. And so certainly ALD for anybody on the call who happens to own it or get paid in it every now and again. We are thinking about ALD, and there's going to be more on that.
Definitely. Very exciting. All right.
And I think we've wrapped up just within the predicted 20 minutes. So thanks to everybody. Another home run.
Another home run. That's right. Aladdin wins again. Ball game. All right.
Make the final. 10-2. That's for anybody who was watching the Briar last weekend.
The Briar? What?
Oh, this is I just dog whistled for some Canadian curling fans.
Oh my word. Well,
the Briar, the premier, I mean up until 5 or 6 years ago, the premier this is the Canadian National Men's Curling Championship. Unbelievable stuff. So good.
Well, I'll have to that's a little rabbit hole for me to go down later then.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you all about it. I'm going to be in your DMs in a second, K-Mets.
I love it. All right, everybody. That's all we got for you this week. We will talk to you later on, and we'll keep you posted. All things Gauge voting. Go, be sure to vote.
Yeah, vote and spread the word, my friends. Spread the word. Let's meet the same time, same place next week.
All right, sounds good. Adios, everybody.
Yes, everyone. Bye.